Hello and welcome to a new episode of Cargill People and Science Live. I am Francesca Brazzorotto, your host, and we're now streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. In recognition of Rare Disease Day, observed on the 28th of February, today we're focusing on something that affects millions globally, yet often remains invisible: rare diseases. And behind every case, every person affected, there's a family navigating uncertainty, delayed answers, and systems that weren't built for small populations. I'm joined today by Luca Bolliger, who has been deeply involved in advancing awareness collaboration and physician education in the rare disease space, particularly around PolG disease. He's in fact the Chief Scientific Officer at the PolG Foundation, and he brings decades of experience in R&D, business development, and strategic leadership in the biopharma space. He works at the intersection of science, strategy, and patient advocacy, helping translate rare disease urgency into coordinated action. Luca, thank you for being here with us today.
Well, thank you, Francesca, and thank you, Cargill, for this great opportunity.
I'd like to start with you, with your experience and what originally led you to dedicate your work to rare diseases. Was there a defining moment, or did you see something broken in the system you wanted to kind of focus on?
You know, like in our industry, serendipity is what's happening most of the time during the drug discovery. So I fell into rare diseases just by luck, because one of my first company I worked for was Actelion in Basel, and Actelion is focused on pulmonary arterial hypertension and Gaucher disease, both of them which are rare diseases. And then throughout the next jobs I had, I was working on type 1 diabetes, which is orphan in the US, ultra rare disease like hemophagocytic lymphohistiocytosis. And in my last job at Recordati, I was pretty much focusing a lot on rare diseases, because Recordati acquired Orphan Europe, which in Europe was the first company in the 90s that focused only on ultra rare and rare diseases.
Okay, wow. That's been a long journey.
A long journey, yes. And but very, very interesting journey.
So what keeps you going in such a complex space? Because rare and very rare diseases are quite interesting, but there's a lot of challenges around them. So what keeps you motivated to stay in that field?
As you pointed out, there are so many patients per se. Each patient is one single case. You can't compare it to diabetes or heart diseases, where the pathology is pretty much normal and well described across a large number of people. In this case, almost every patient is a single patient. So the science and the scientific approach in order to try to tackle this problem is key. And being interested in science, I think, this is probably what pushed me and made me very interested in that space.
I see. I mean, people hear rare and they think small, but the actual impact for that person, for that family, is anything but small, right? So from your experience, what makes rare diseases such a unique and urgent area of healthcare? Is just because of the particular science? Is also the fragmentation of care? What are the challenges that you see there? And then we can move into the PolG specifically later on.
Yeah, so when you work in the rare and ultra rare space, and even if you are in a pharma or biotech company, you are exposed to patients, so you know by name the patient and their family. So the impact you can bring and the motivation you get from these personal stories is just incredible. And I think each of the people working in that space profit and feel that the need, but also they get a lot of motivation to be able to do something to change and to improve the life of the patients, but also the dramatic consequences that the family have to go through to support the family members that are suffering from the disease.
Yeah, I see. And I think I heard something from one of the videos that Carger created with the PolG Foundation, and there is a patient discussing this very thing. You mentioned that, the importance of the patient to kind of, I wouldn't say offer themselves, but like try to help the community or all the people affected by the same disease by, trying to help as much as they can, and so that, science can advance. And I feel like this is something that is very common in the rare disease communities, the need to come together to pool voices and data. So why do patients in rare disease often need to join forces globally to syndicate just to be heard? Is there something specific for rare disease?
Yes, absolutely. So as mentioned, if you consider an indication rare, is in the end not rare, because if you get all the rare disease patients together, you get about 300 to 400 million people that are suffering from a rare disease, which means that 4 to 6% of the global rare disease prevalence, and this is very, very high. And but in reality is that for some indications you might have about 100 patients around the globe or even less. And if you want to, let's say, get your voice not only in the science world, but also towards pharmaceutical, towards regulatory authorities, towards insurances, you have to syndicate and to make sure that some other people that are feeling the same and suffering from the same as you are get together, and then they create more impact. And what is also key is that, if you have data only from one patient, it's very difficult to draw conclusions. So in order to make sure that you start collecting data and structured data and make sure that maybe you can detect some common path, it's important that patients across the globe unite and create a good quality data repository, share experience about food allergies and these kind of things, so that you can really help also new patients that were just diagnosed.
Yeah, and it's not only just about the patients, obviously, because they might not know they are part of the pool if they have not been diagnosed. So I guess the challenges are also to kind of unite different point of view, different cases coming from all over the globe. So clinicians need to know as well what they're looking at when they're meeting with one of these rare diseases that haven't been studied or compared with other places, for example, right? So it's complicated.
It's very complicated, but you touch a very important point, because it can happen that a physician will never see a specific ultra rare or rare disease patient, so he or she is not able to properly diagnose and recognize the symptom of a rare disease. So that's why as a PolG Foundation we decided to create a dedicated, and together with Target, a dedicated fact sheet describing the clinical symptoms and the do and not to do things for PolG patients, but also to create videos to give an update about the R&D activities, to provide the perspective of a patient, and also to provide the perspective of clinicians and the drug development that are currently happening.
Yes, absolutely. And there's a few things that you mentioned that I want to touch upon. So the first of all, the data, I'll go back to that later on, because I think it's a very interesting subject when we talk about rare diseases, and I'm sure a lot of researchers that are connected with us today that are watching this video might be curious about how we work with this data. But let's take a step back a little bit, and let's talk about PolG, since you work with the PolG Foundation. So could you first of all explain what is PolG disease in simple terms? So what does it affect? Why is often missed? And then we can take it from there.
Yeah. Excuse me. So PolG is a mitochondrial disease, and mitochondria are the energy house of the cell. So you have to imagine that the cell needs energy to perform the different metabolic activities that are needed in the different organs. So the muscle, to move the muscles, the brain, to make the central nervous system work, and so on. And in order to be able to perform these activities, you need energy. And mitochondria are this electrical power of the cell. Now, in order to be able to perform this activity, you have a master that is necessary, and this master is polymerase gamma. Polymerase gamma is a protein that is responsible for the replication of the genetic material within the mitochondria. And if the master has some defects of point mutations and is not able to perform the proper replication activity of the genetic material, you will have an increased number of errors in the genetic material of the mitochondria, or deletions of DNA in the mitochondrial DNA. And this will lead to a dysfunctional mitochondria, and a dysfunctional mitochondria can affect different organs and is causing the disease.
Right. And this can affect anybody? Is it more common to be spotted in children and infants, or something that at the moment is more commonly spotted in adults?
So this is mutation. So those mutations can affect newborn children, adolescent, and adults. And depending on the mutation and the context the disease can start either early in life or later in life. The earlier it starts, the more dramatic the outcome of the disease is.
I imagine, and also because it affects all kind of cells. So it means that the symptoms must be very, very hard to spot, right? And that's where you were talking about maybe those videos that you created with Karger to also create awareness among the physicians. So are there any red flags that they should be able to recognize, or?
Yeah, so one of the challenge of rare disease is that oftentimes the symptoms are common to other diseases, which leads to a misdiagnosis of the real condition. So in this case, you need a physician that is aware about the fact that if you have a kid with epilepsy, that maybe PolG could be a factor affecting the epilepsy together with other symptoms that you might see. And then before providing the standard of care, in this case would be valproic acid, you do maybe a genetic test to see if the patient is affected by PolG, because the administration of the standard of care, which is valproic acid, would essentially cause a liver failure and potentially kill the patient. So it's very important that a proper, quick diagnosis is performed in order to not to jeopardize life of these patients.
Of course, and it must be very tough to kind of spot it in young children or young children or newborn, because they cannot explain sometimes their what they're feeling or what they're experiencing, right? So unless they have something visible like a seizure or something in the case of epilepsy.
Yeah, or in case of genetic diseases, maybe they have a sibling that is older and where the disease was already diagnosed before, and then the physician are aware, and in this case is good. But if this is the first child, there is a risk that of misdiagnosis, and then the irreparable disaster happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what are you trying to achieve with the PolG Foundation? Are you just kind of relating to clinicians? Are you also trying to target specialists, policymakers? So what are the knowledge gaps you're trying to close? And, are you also trying to unite kind of people around the globe or just in Europe?
So what we do at the PolG, and that's the spirit of the foundation, is we are not a patient support group, but we are fully dedicated in trying to find solution for PolG patients. So the amount of money that foundation has raised and will be raising will be reinvested fully in projects that either help better understanding the disease, improve diagnostic, and in particular find a therapeutic solution for these type of patients. So what we have been doing in the past, we invested in a number of projects to have better animal models so that we can study and better understand the disease, but also have then preclinical model to test potential drugs. We have been investing in pluripotent cells derived from patients so that we can have a better understanding of the disease in a human cellular setting. And now we have a big project that is going to be very important in understanding the trajectory of the disease. And this is a prospective natural history clinical trial that we have just initiated. And the goal is to enroll about 300 patients, different age groups, so that we are going to be able to have a natural trajectory of the disease. And this is going to be the baseline for the development of potential future therapeutics.
Oh, fantastic. And we're going back to data once again, and with these clinical trials. And data is often scarce in rare diseases, as we mentioned, and the better data sharing actually accelerates insights, right? So we work in publishing at Karger, obviously, and we often talk about open access and open data, open science. Is that something you're familiar with, or you have to deal with your work, or something you hear researchers talking about?
So definitely, the optimal situation would be to be able to share good quality curated data globally, so that there is going to be a strong base of data and going to be helpful for everybody. It's not always that easy to collect high quality data. You have to make sure that privacy, that the quality of the data, that the capturing of the data. So there are multiple steps that need to be considered in order to make sure that the curation and the quality of the data is important. And with our natural history, what we try to do. So we try to group East and West. It's a global natural history trial, and one of the key is to work with experts on the disease that make sure that the quality of the data they collect is interchangeable and curated.
Oh, fantastic. That's so important for us as a publisher when we deal with, obviously, medical publishing, to make sure that the data is available so that it can be helpful to replicate experiments and trials. So do you think there's anything else that publishers like us or a scientific communication platform can do to help foundations like the PolG in this endeavor? Anything else?
Well, I think the project that we did together and all the materials you also generated on other diseases, I think is going to be very helpful, not only for clinicians or becoming clinicians, but also for family and patients that are interested in exploring in more depth what the disease is. So I think good quality information is always valuable, and you know better than me that unfortunately in our world of scientific publication, at least 50% of the data are not reproducible. So it's very, very hard to make sure that always you have a better signal to noise ratio. So, and you guys are doing that. So this is what we need, and we need more.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. And just referring back to the videos we were discussing just now, we have collaborated Carger has collaborated with the PolG Foundation, and I think they've released a few videos on what PolG is, and there is also a testimony from a patient discussing his experience and how he would like to help discovery of new forms of how to help with the PolG disease by testing and things like that. And so I invite you to go on our YouTube channel. Well, they're there for sure. So we'll share the link later on in the chat, or maybe with our newsletter when we share the recording of this video. So I invite you to have a look if you're curious about it. They're really, really good.
Francesca, just to build on what you said, I think the videos are not only for lay people, but the videos are also thought for treating physicians and maybe physicians that have not yet been exposed to PolG, and obviously for patients and families. So we really try to have a target that is pretty broad.
Absolutely. So yeah, they're there. So I hope we can share the link with you very soon so that you can have a look. So we discussed what is broken. We discussed about the difficulties of having to spot the disease, of collecting data, making it available for everybody. But let's try and think about what is working and what is going to happen moving forward, and what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. What are your thoughts on this? Where is this going?
Well, I don't own a crystal ball, but I'm very optimistic because in the last 5 years, the genetic engineering and new approaches and new therapeutic formats really have been validated. And I think those approaches will provide great benefit to patients. And we also see that, and if you follow what FDA has been releasing over the last 2 weeks, that there is an interest in making sure that the treatments are safe, but to be more flexible and allowing early access to treatments where you have, the same gene as multiple mutations, but at least if you try with one patient, that maybe the access for the second patient that has a different mutation of the same gene is going to be facilitated. So from the regulatory side, I think, and in particular in the US, you see more openness in having early access, which is great because we also learn, how these patients will react, because patients are fragile. So we will learn how they react with this new therapeutic format. And I think this can, honestly, I think this can open up treatment for larger indications where gene therapy could be seen as a solution. So I'm very positive, and I think medicine is going to do great things in the future.
Oh, fantastic. And so if you were talking about regulatory and policy changes and things like that, well, differences, and those are everywhere in the world. So you work globally, but obviously every country, or at least the US and Europe, might have different approaches and policies. So if you could change one thing at policy or regulatory level tomorrow, what would make the biggest difference? And in this field, could be global registries, cross-border collaboration, technology.
I think the recipe will have to have more ingredients because in order to develop therapies, you need to be able to sell them and you need to be able to have a price so that there is a business around that. And I think that a global approach with a reasonable pricing in the rare disease space is something that we need. So, for example, in the US, they have a big advantage that it's a unified market. So your drug has been approved. The day after approval, you can launch it. And there are some incentives to develop drugs in the rare disease. Like lately, they reestablished the pediatric voucher. In Europe, the challenge is on top of the fact that prices are lower in Europe than in the US, is that you get approval by the European Commission, and then you have to go and negotiate in each of the 27 countries the pricing, and this is delaying the access of treatment to patients. So I think my wish for Europe is to have proper incentives to motivate academics and the industry to develop drugs, but also from the commercial side, that if you have an approval, to find a mechanism regarding pricing that allows you to launch after the approval in all 27 European countries.
Yes, absolutely. That makes sense. I was thinking about, every single country then has to negotiate. It's just going to take a long time, and a lot of patients don't have that much time. So the impact is huge, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you've worked with other rare diseases. You work with very rare diseases. Do you see the same push as the PolG Foundation is kind of giving with PolG? Have you seen the same kind of movement going on with the other rare diseases that you have worked with, or I don't know, are there any differences?
In the ultra rare and rare disease space, it's a very personal event that is touching the patient and the family and the environment. So most of these initiatives linked to rare diseases are linked to family, to mothers, fathers, that create a foundation, start raising money, go and talk to scientists, to clinicians. And I would say, maybe if there is one difference, I would say that in the United States, they are better organized and better structured than in Europe. And it's obvious because in Europe you have different languages, you have different system. So it's much harder in Europe. But I think if we can create in Europe a critical mass that goes beyond the political boundaries of each of the nations, and to have a European database for each of the rare diseases, it will be already a great advantage. And then this will also facilitate families and groups of interest to syndicate and work together.
Okay, quindi, so a European registry basically for rare diseases. I thought it will already be in place, so there's nothing like that yet.
So some of them are already in place, but it's more difficult regarding the funding. So in the United States, the philanthropy is kind of easier and more intrinsic to the thinking than in Europe, I have to say. Although for rare diseases, I have to say that France and Italy probably are in Europe the two nations that were precursor in addressing this group of patients.
Oh, fantastic! As an Italian, I'm proud of that. Good to know.
You should. You should.
Yes. So I'm sure there are researchers watching this right now. So any word of wisdom that could, kind of invite them to maybe focus on rare disease as a field of study. Maybe they have to choose a research project or something like that. What it would be your word of wisdom to make them focus on this, for example?
Well, I think some of the rare disease pathologies have some mechanism of actions that are linked intrinsically to larger indications. So that maybe if you focus and you clarify a genetic ultra rare or rare diseases, this will shed light on some larger indications. So the knowledge gap you were talking about maybe is easier to be tackled in the ultra rare space and then export it into larger indications. So.
Okay, so take note if you were interested in this subject, then something to think about. And just out of curiosity, how is the use of AI for pattern recognition and stuff like in PolG and rare diseases working? Is that something that you are using a lot? Is something you're seeing more often?
So AI for sure a team, and in particularly in the diagnostic part, because it can help spotting pattern that a physician that has never been exposed to PolG would not spot, but with an AI tool you could spot. So there are some initiatives going in towards this direction, also to differentiate, because there are many mitochondrial related diseases. So to differentiate one indication or one disease from the other, it can be helpful. There is a lot of investment in drug discovery in AI. So we follow what's happening. The challenge is, like we said in the beginning, if the signal to noise or the reproducibility of the data that are published is less than 50%, you just need to make sure that the data you use to train your AI models is well curated and of high quality. Then I think you can get interesting insight. From the time being, I think the best insights you get them for diagnostic purposes and a lot of activity in the drug discovery activity. But we'll see if, from drug discovery to a commercial product, there is a long way and the attrition rate is very high, but I think we are getting there.
Okay, so this is a very nice and positive outlook towards what's coming. So in your work as part of PolG or the PolG Foundation, how do you see that evolving? So I don't know, I'm not talking 5 to 10 years, but like, what does it mean for the next year or so? Are there any new things happening that you're very excited about, something that you're really looking forward to that you can disclose, obviously, or any new initiatives that are you going to run that we can share with the people watching?
Well, there are companies that have products for PolG in the clinic. So this is very exciting. So Pretzel as a compound, a PolG activator in the clinic. Stealth has some, collected some data as well. And other companies have shown interest and are interested in repurposing, so to say, their drugs into PolG. So I think this is really great for the PolG patients, and hopefully we will get some good result in the next maybe 12 months.
Okay, that's great. I like that we can kind of end our conversation on a positive note, even though the topic is very serious and, as we say, it affects everybody and a lot of families. And but it's good to know that we can look ahead and see that things are coming together and there are people working behind the scene, like your foundation, that really can help physicians recognize the symptoms, can help researchers find patterns and share their work with everybody else, and get a clinical trial, a global clinical trial working. So yeah, thanks for sharing all your information and feedback with us today.
Well, thank you, Francesca, for the opportunity. And we see ourselves as a aggregating tool, so we want to bring experts together and to try to find a solution for the PolG patients.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for your work. And to everyone watching, Rare Disease Day may be one date on the calendar, as I said, is on 28th of February, but awareness and action should really extend far beyond it. So have a look at the videos that we have cooperated and collaborated with PolG Foundation, and have a look at what PolG does. And yeah, keep in touch, comment under the video or send us an email. And yeah, we'll see you with the People in Science Live next time. Thank you again, Luca.
Thank you,
Bye.
Francesca. Take care. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Here we are. Thank you so
Okay.
much.